Hey guys, it's Luke Yon, and today I am going to be filming one of my favorite videos to film every year, and that is the mid-year book freakout tag. So the mid-year book freakout tag is basically just, as the title suggests, a mid-year check-in. There are a bunch of questions about books that you've read so far in the year. I know I'm filming this a little bit late, so I'm only going to be answering with books that I read in the first half of the year, so up until the end of June. Before I get started, I do just want to apologize for being pretty absent this summer and honestly like this whole year, but it's just been a little bit of a hectic time because I was a senior this year, so I had to focus on school a lot, and I was hearing back from different colleges, and then I had like graduation and graduation parties, and I've been on a few vacations so far this summer, so I have been a little bit more absent than I would like and than I have in the past. So I'm definitely going to try to bulk film a bunch of videos this month before I head off to college, because I move in at the end of August, and there are a bunch of videos that I want to get done. I do want to film another bookshelf tour. I want to film a college advice video. I definitely have to film some wrap-ups for the summer, and yeah, so I'm definitely going to try to film a ton of videos in August and then get edit and upload them like kind of throughout my first semester. But that's not what we're here for right now. We are here to film the mid-year book freakout tag, and question number one is what has been your favorite book or books so far this year, and I actually have two answers for that. The first is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. This is the first book in a new fantasy duology that kind of incorporates Arthurian mythology, and it follows a main character named Tamsin who is a part of this league of treasure hunters who try to find artifacts and relics from mythology and trade them. And for a really long time she has been trying to figure out a way to learn more about and break the curse on her brother, and in this book, she kind of gets a little bit of a lead, and she ends up going to the Isle of Avalon, which is a, place in Arthurian legend, and she kind of tries to break this curse a little bit more. It's like a treasure hunting quest sort of story, and I loved everything about it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in my June wrap-up when I get around to filming that, but I really loved it. I thought it was great. I love Alexandra Bracken. I can always count on her for an amazing story, and this one did not disappoint. And then the other one that I have to talk about is Her Radiant Curse by Elizabeth Lim. I read this in May, and I do actually feature it in my Asian Readathon vlog, so you can check that out if you want to. It was my last video before this one. And this is a prequel to Six Crimson Cranes, and I talked about it a lot in that video, but I loved it. I loved the characters, I loved the world, and I just thought that it was almost, if not as good as Six Crimson Cranes, and I cannot wait to get a finished copy when it comes out next month. Next is the best sequel or sequels you've read so far this year, and I also have two answers for this one. The first being These Infinite Threads by Tahereh Mafi. This is the second book in the Woven Kingdom series, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I love Tahereh Mafi. Shatter Me is another one of my favorite series of all time. I love Furthermore, A Very Large Expanse of Sea, and Emotion of Great Delight. All of them are really, really amazing, and this one was also great. I have a full spoiler-filled reading vlog for this book as well, which I can link in the description box below. But I loved everything about this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It continued the story in ways that I wasn't expecting, and there were just a lot of twists and turns, and it was a great sequel, and I'm so excited for the next book. The cover was just revealed. It's called All This Twisted Glory, and I'm super excited to get to that when it comes out next year, and I'm definitely going to be filming a reading vlog and everything, and I'm so excited that this series is going to be longer than 3 books, because I just cannot wait for the rest of the story. And then I also have like kind of a sequel, and that is 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson. This is the 5th book in the Stevie Bell series, and this is one of the standalones in the Stevie Bell series. So obviously there was the Truly Devious books, which were a trilogy that centered around one mystery. There was The Box in the Woods, which was a standalone mystery, and then we have 9 Liars, and this book follows the mystery of this group called the Nine, and one day they are at a country house in England, and there is a murder that happens, and obviously Stevie Bell gets involved. She ends up traveling to England, so we do some traveling in this book, and I loved it. I loved it almost as much as the original trilogy. I thought it was a perfect mystery. I loved the resolution, and I obviously always love following Stevie around. And then there's also a question that I like to add every year, and it's what was your favorite finale so far? And for that, I have to go with Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. This is the third and final book in the Last Hour series, and I also have a full spoiler-filled reading blog for this book as well, which I can link. And I know a lot of people were disappointed by this book, but I really, really loved it. You can see some of my more in-depth spoilery thoughts in that video, but I really loved it. I thought that it did the characters justice for me, and I didn't love it as much as Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron, but I do think that it was really solid. I loved the plot. I was invested the entire time. Which is hard to do in a 750-page book, but I was never bored. I just loved getting to follow the characters and see how the story wrapped up, and I was ultimately really satisfied with the ending. Next we have a new release that you haven't read yet but want to, and I have a few for this one. The first being The Everstorms by Amanda Foody. This is the third book in the Wilderlore series, which is a middle grade series that I really enjoy. We also have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshni Chokshi. I haven't been great with keeping up on my Roshni Chokshi releases, but she's one of my favorite authors of all time, and I'm super excited to read this book. I just haven't really gotten around to it yet. And then we also have The Night in Question by Kathleen Glasgow and Liz Lawson. I read the Agatha's last year, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm super excited to see what happens in this sequel. Then we have most anticipated releases for the second half of the year, the first of which is going to be The Honeymoon Crashers by Christina Lauren. This is a audiobook sequel sort of book to The Unhoneymooners, which is my favorite romance book of all time. I loved it so much. I reread it every summer, and this is going to be from the perspective of another character, but I'm super excited because I cannot wait to return to these characters. I also have A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber, which is the third and final book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart when it first came out, and I didn't love it, but I really enjoyed The Ballad of Never After, which was the sequel, and I'm just super interested to see how the story continues and ultimately wraps up. I also have Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is her first book in a adult fantasy series, which I'm super excited for. I'm really interested to see what she does outside of the Shadowhunter Chronicles because I haven't read her middle grade series, so this will be my first time reading one of her books outside of that series. Then I have The Ruined by Renee Attia, which is the fourth and final book in the Beautiful series, which is another series that I really love. Most of these books are continuations of series, and I cannot wait to see how everything wraps up because it has been over a year since the last book in the series, and it's only been 2 years since I read it because I got an advanced reader copy of The Righteous, so it's been a really long time since I've been back with these characters, but I'm so pumped to see how everything resolves. And then the last anticipated release that I have on this list is The Spirit Glass by Roshni Chokshi, which is a middle grade standalone that is inspired by Filipino mythology, so super excited for that one as well. Next is Biggest Disappointment, and for that I definitely have to go with The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I read the Hunger Games trilogy this year, and I absolutely loved it. I love the movies, but somehow even though I knew the whole story, I really, really loved all three books in that series, and I really wanted to enjoy the prequel, but I just hated it. It's, I think, my only one-star book so far for this year, and I just could not get behind it. Next we have Your Biggest Surprise. Actually 3 books for that, the first of which being Lost in the Moment and Found by Shauna Maguire. This is the 8th book, I think, in the Wayward Children series, and I have gone through many Wayward Children books without really enjoying many of them, but this one was a home run for me. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it, and I am so excited for the next book because it's actually going to be following the same character as Lost in the Moment and Found, so really enjoyed the character. I really loved the world, I thought it was very different from the other books because Sean McGuire wasn't trying to pack in so much short story into a short novella, so I think it worked really well, and I'm super excited to see how the story progresses. Then I have Beasts of Prey by Ayana Gray, which is the first book in a YA fantasy trilogy, and I had actually put this book off for a really long time, but I asked for it for Christmas last year, and I devoured it. It was such a fast read for me, and I loved every second of it. I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and I loved the characters in here. The world was so interesting and like new and different, and I thought the plot was super engaging, and I cannot wait to continue on with the series. And then I also have To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I actually read this entire trilogy this year, and I loved every second of it. It's one of my new favorite series of all time. I just like devoured these books, and I had actually planned to unhaul them because I owned them for a few years, and I just never got around to them, but I decided to just pick the first book up on a whim, and then I read the entire trilogy in like a week. So definitely really loved this, and definitely a big surprise as well. I actually shouldn't have put down that book because the next question is your favorite new to you author, and I have to go with Jenny Han. Yeah, she is. Most of the authors I've read from this year are authors I've read from before. I haven't read a ton of like debut authors, and I also didn't want to choose someone that I only read one book from, but I read 6 books from Jenny Han this year, and I didn't love all of them. Like, I didn't love the Summer I Turned Pretty series as much, but I do think that I'm going to pick up all of the books that she writes from here on out, and I'm super excited, or I'm just really glad that I did end up picking up this series, because as I said, it's one of my favorites, my new favorites. Once again, I don't know why I put the book down, because I'm actually mentioning it again in the next question, which is favorite fictional character, and I have to go with Laura Jean Song-Cubby from this series. I know people give her a lot of hate, but I found myself like continuing to defend her all throughout this series because she just felt very real and relatable, and I think all the characters in this series are very realistic, and I was rooting for all of them all throughout. But I think she's a great character. I loved being inside her head for all 3 of these books, and I don't know, I really liked following her along on her journey. Then I also definitely have to go with Ren from The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This is a sequel series kind of to The Cruel Prince, or the Folk of the Air trilogy, which I reread this year and actually really loved the second time around. And I actually gave this book 5 out of 5 stars as well, and I just really loved Ren as a character, and I think definitely the way that we leave off on this book was super interesting, and I cannot wait to see how she kind of develops in The Prisoner's Throne, which is the sequel. And I just really liked, again, being in her head for this book and her journey especially. Then I also want to talk about Vanna and Chani from Her Radiant Curse by Elizabeth Lim. I can't really get into it because this book hasn't come out yet, but I loved both of these characters, and it was really sad that it's a standalone because I loved their journeys. It's a very character-focused book, and I loved both the point of view character and the sister. Like, you know, I just thought they were really great, and I can always count on Elizabeth Lim to write some great protagonists. And then I also have Tamsin from Silver and the Bone. She's a very, like, prickly sort of character, but she knows what she wants, and she's gonna, you know, get it, because she's very determined, and I always like a headstrong main character. Then we have a book that made you cry, and I'm gonna bring out Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare once again, because there were a lot of moments that I was like tearing up. I never really cry during books, but there were a lot of moments in here where we were just spending time with the characters, and it made me pretty emotional, so definitely have to say this one. And then surprisingly, I also have to say Cursed by Marissa Meyer, which is the sequel and finale to Gilded, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and the ending of this book was just very bittersweet, and the series can get pretty dark sometimes, and I think the ending was satisfying in a way that made me, like, feel a little bit, like, sad and, like, weepy. But again, I didn't actually cry, I was just kind of, like, tearing up at the end, just because, I don't know, there are, like, some deaths and stuff, and it's just, like, the epilogue especially made me like really emotional. Then we have a book that made you laugh, and for that I have to go with 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson once again, because I just really love the characters in this series. I've gotten to know them a lot through these like 5 books, and Stevie always makes me laugh. I love Janelle. David sometimes makes me laugh as well. Nate for sure. And there were some other like new characters in this book that definitely made me chuckle while reading. And then maybe another one that might surprise you is Hellbent by Lee Bardugo. This is the sequel to Ninth House, and I didn't love this book as much as I was hoping. I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars, and this series isn't one of my favorites, and definitely like a weaker one for Lee Bardugo in my opinion, but there were a lot of moments in this book that I actually like laughed at because some of the characters are really funny, and I like the humor, the breaks that we get like in this really dark, intense story for some humor. Dawes, who is Alex's friend, is really, really funny, and Alex definitely has some good one-liners here and there. And there were also just like some situations that were like so ridiculous that they were funny, and like the intersection of the real world and like the magic world was kind of funny. So definitely have to go with Hellbent as well. And then we have possibly the easiest question for me to answer, and it is most beautiful book you bought or received this year, and for that I have to go with the Illumicrate edition of These Infinite Threads by Tahira Mafi. I have the Illumicrate edition of This Woven Kingdom as well. It's on that top shelf. It's the one like facing out. And I actually like missed the day to order These Infinite Threads, and I talked about it in my reading vlog for this book, but then I got on the wait list, and surprisingly I was able to purchase a copy, and I do not regret it because these are some of the most beautiful books that I own. But it has this really beautiful foiling. We have 2 dragons here, which is important to the plot, of course. We have this spine here with the dragons, and then we have a description of the book, and then we have also green sprayed edges with the like crisscrossing foiling and the dragon, and then it's green on both sides. There's also like a very vibrant green on the end papers, and the book is also signed by Tahira Mafi right here. And yeah, I am so happy that I was able to purchase a copy of these, and I cannot wait to see how the entire series lines up, because this is one of my favorite series, and I don't often buy multiple copies of my favorite books, but I had to splurge with these books because they're really great, and I also love this series. And then the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I feel like I talked about like most of the books that I wanted to read by the end of the year, but just by talking about my anticipated releases. And I don't know, there were some other books, but there's nothing on my shelf that I feel like I need to get to. I would have said A Day, Fall, and Night by Samantha Shannon, but I did end up reading that in July, so that's one. But yeah, nothing that I feel like I absolutely have to read by the end of the year. But I hope I get to a lot more books by the time December is over. And then there's also the last thing, which is who do you tag? And if you want to do the mid-year book freakout tag, I tag you as well, because it's a really fun tag to do and just kind of reflect on the first half of the reading year. But that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I promise I'll be back with some more videos soon. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to... Well, I'm interested to see how filming in college goes. I'm going to try to film as much as I can when I'm home, like during breaks and stuff, and bulk film before I actually move in, but I'll definitely have to film a few videos in my dorm whenever I get a chance. But yeah, that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. All my social media links are in the description box below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!